I know for a dead certain fact that there is an ongoing 70-year ongoing disinformation campaign by the U.S. government to sow confusion in an effort to get people off the trail of what this really is. There is something going on.
Read the Bible. I'm a Christian. I'm not a very good one, obviously, by my chosen profession. But, the Bible talks about Ezekiel saw the wheel, and it describes a wheel within a wheel.
Exactly.
And it describes a landing gear and all these other things that we would today say are modern day flying saucers.
So Tucker Carlson brings on a congressman to talk about the UFO agenda and what has actually been going on with the disclosure of the UFO, what the government calls UAP. What's happening? Is it real? What's going on? Let's find out.
Thank you, Congressman, for doing this. I never talk about
It's
UFO.
Tim.
Thank you, Tim. Never talk about UFOs. We don't do shows on UFOs, UAPs, whatever they're calling them, these mysterious lights, these objects.
We're still going to call them UFOs. Like, come on, guys. The government making us call it UAPs. Come on. UAP is just like a bad name.
Because I know for a dead certain fact that there is an ongoing 70-year ongoing disinformation campaign by the U.S. government to sow confusion. Some people participating in that effort, I don't think they know they're participating in the effort, but they are nevertheless selling lies in an effort to get people off the trail of what this really is. There is something going on. What is it? It's so hard to know. You're one of the few people, from my perspective, who seems sincere. You're also informed as a member of Congress. And so I'm just grateful that you're doing this because I think you're going to be telling the truth. So what are these things?
I want to know as well.
Well, I don't know. I think there's a lot of different misconceptions about them. I kind of came into it organically, I guess. I had pretty cool parents. They would just take me to the library and just let me stay. Or I'd ride my bike over and stay a couple hours. I grew up in the 70s in Tennessee. And, I guess now you'd probably be taken to DCS or something for that. But,
yeah.
I went in there and I can remember there was a stack of books on a thing. And, they had all the, something on maybe the occult or something like that. And then Bigfoot. And then there's something on UFOs. And I picked up the UFO book, started reading about it. And it just fascinated me. And I read the Bible. I'm a Christian. I'm not a very good one, obviously, by my chosen profession. But, the Bible talks about Ezekiel saw the wheel. And people always say, well, that was a dream. They always try to over-explain things in the Bible. And I just think it's written for simple folks like me. And
I agree with that.
And it was a translation, though. And at the time, the most technologically advanced item that they had was a wheel. And it describes a wheel within a wheel.
Exactly.
And it describes a landing gear and all these other things that we would today say are modern day flying saucers.
And it's pretty specific, and the Ezekiel passage you're referring to is it's not just like a parenthetical note. It's like a whole description.
Oh yeah, he goes into it. He describes, I think, the landing gear. In some translations, it talks about it being hooves of animal, like the hoof of an animal. Which, if you see, you see when we went to the moon, that there is the landing gear. It's got a pad. If we actually went to the moon.
By the way, guys, this isn't a regular person speaking with a regular person. This is a congressman. A congressman. This is one of the highest positions in the United States government, saying, hey, we may not be alone. And the government has been hiding some things for about 70 years. That's what we're seeing right now.
I know there's a lot of people there that don't believe it, but
I'm arching my eyebrows, but will refrain from comment.
Yeah. But so I'm laying on my couch. Fast forward, I'm in Congress. I'm laying on my couch and I'm getting ready to go to sleep. I sleep in my office, and shower in the gym. I'm not, as my banker says, he called me one day and said, he said, brother, he said, I'm pretty sure that you're the most honest member of Congress, but I know you're the poorest. so, I do that. And so I was watching, there was a thing on UFOs and they were talking about, some former members were involved in some stuff trying to find out something. And I thought, I'm going to start asking some questions. And then I'm walking down the street and the center of all media in Washington, D.C., TMZ, his name's Colin. He's a good friend of mine. We've been to lunch and hang out some, but he stopped me and I didn't know who he was. And he said, hey, I'm with TMZ. He said, what do you think about this UFO report that's getting ready to come out? And I said, brother, it'll look like it was shot with a shotgun because it would be all redacted.
Oh yeah.
And, and then, and I said, and it won't come out when they say it's going to come out. And I said, really, why? And I said, well, probably because the original report is probably going to have something in it and they're going to pull it back. And sure enough, they did. And it was heavily redacted and it was just a big fluff piece, nothing. And then I said the magic words, which I ended up putting on one of my T-shirts, which I sell on my website, that more people believe in UFOs than believe in Congress. And
for good reason.
And for great reason.
Whoa, more people believe in UFOs than people who believe in Congress. The funny part is that's actually true. Right now, government trust is at an all-time low. All-time low. Meaning, if you go to the average person and say, do you trust your government that they're doing the best that they can for you? Or that they are trying to help you? I would say 8 out of 10 people will say, no, they're not. And by the way, 80 years ago, that was not the case. Now, that is the case. That's just how it is. But that is a funny quote. Wow.
And so people started calling me, all these national figures that you see, reporters, legitimate reporters like yourself, people from all over the country. And so I started asking questions. And
You should.
And I get with Luna and some other folks. Matt Gaetz was involved in it at the time. And we went to the chairman and said, let's have a hearing. And I think Tucker, I think they just patted us on the head and said, sure, we'll have the hearing, and they're going to make fun of you and go on. Turned out, I talked to some old timers that were there, reporters. They said that was the most attended hearing they'd ever had. They had to open up another room and there were people lined up down the hall. When I walked out at, in the morning, I walked out of the office, had to be on an early show about it. At 4:30 in the morning, people were already lined up outside the building. And they come from all over the country. One guy came on his vacation, and there was ministers there. There's people. So it really touched a nerve. And,
they're hoping for disclosure.
That's exactly right. The truth. And they're tired of being told they're idiots. And the funny thing about it all is that when I go to speak to groups, it never fails that somebody of prominence will come, a doctor, a lawyer, a PR person will come up to me and say, hey, I had an experience. I was helping out a colleague. I rarely go out of town. This is kind of unusual for me. So this is kind of a interesting deal for me up here. But I went to another congressman's district to help him run for reelection. We were sitting in a country club, and I'm not a country clubber type, as you can probably tell. Jackie Gleason said I wouldn't join a country club that'd have somebody like me, and I'm sort of like that way, And I sit next to this lady, and she was classy. You could tell she was old money. She wasn't new money. She had nice jewelry on, and she had the clothes you could tell were nice. And she was just a classy lady. And she said, well, Congressman, about those UFOs. And I thought, well, here it comes. I'm going to get popped. And she said, I had an experience when I was in college. She said she talked about going to pick up her brother, and this thing followed them down for several minutes. It was cylindrical shaped, and it followed them. I think it was close to dark, and it was kind of lit up. It had a bluish tint to it or something, and it followed them for quite some time. And then it just took off, and they were like, "What in the world was that?" And they, this was in the 70s. And she said, "I really haven't really told many people that." And I get
Mm.
stories like that. I had and when they film you, when I was early on in Congress, I had plenty of time, obviously, it being the 435th most powerful member of Congress. And, these History Channel, all these folks would come interview me, and they would do, one time they interviewed me for like an hour. So they would take segments of that and put that out for just multiple issues, of their TV show, hunting UFOs or whatever. And I remember I was in Nashville at the time, and a colleague, a former state legislator, a guy who was in leadership, called me up. And I remember it was kind of ironic that he was back in East Tennessee, and I was in Nashville for a get together I was throwing for our state legislators, because when I was in legislature, nobody ever did anything for us from Congress. And I just get down there and throw them a spaghetti dinner or something, And the phone rang, and it was him. And he said, "Timbo," he said, "I just saw you on TV on the UFO show." And I said, "Really?" And I thought, here it comes. He's going to pop me. He said, "Let me tell you a story about when I was in the Navy." And he's older, and he was hollering back at his wife, "What year was that?" And she would holler. I think it was in the late 50s. And he was on I believe it's a tin can, but that's a destroyer. You probably know more. But anyway, he was in the Navy, and he said it was early on when they were first putting nuclear missiles on subs. They were unloading a missile for the sub. And he said the sub got out there, and then this thing just flew over the top of them. He said, remember him said, "Timbo, if that thing was 2 city blocks, it had to be 2 city blocks wide." He said it was
Wow.
cylindrical, and he named it, and he described it. And then he said it just took off. No noise, no heat, no vapor, nothing. And they all just stood there and were talking. They're going, "What the heck was that?"
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. We need disclosure. We want to know from the government what is actually going on. You have to understand, 10 years ago, if you talked about any of this, you were the cuckoo guy. You were ridiculous. You made no sense. You were dumb. Now the government is openly coming up and saying, "Hey, we may be doing something. We may be aware of things." And it's like, "Oh, wait a minute. So all along you've been lying to us." This is why trust of the government is so low. And we got to figure out, what is this? Are is this is this the US government? That's number one. Is it an enemy? But then it's all across the world that's happening. These aircrafts that are moving in ways that shouldn't be possible, and they're making no sound, and they are escaping radar, and they've existed. We've known about them for hundreds, I think thousands of years, but we have like recordings now of them since 80 years ago, since Roswell. So, what in the world is actually happening? Is it the United States just having advanced technology? Is it an enemy that has technology now that is operating? Is it demons? Is it angels? What is it? We do not know. And I would love apostles and pastors. I would love for them to talk about this, because I have a feeling this is going to get bigger and bigger, and this topic is going to get bigger, bigger, and bigger, and bigger. And I think more disclosure is going to slowly come out, and we may be very surprised on what's going on in this world. But stay blessed. Keep reading your Bible. God bless you.